The 70s and 80s, wild times. It was an era of transformation, a time when society was breaking free from the rigid norms of the past. The streets were alive with energy, and the air was thick with the promise of change. Disco was king, bell-bottoms were everywhere, and hitchhiking? That was just how you got around. People were more trusting, more open to strangers. It was a time when the world felt a little smaller, and the road was a symbol of freedom. But in California, a shadow fell over that free-spirited vibe. The Golden State, known for its sunshine and dreams, was hiding a dark secret. The highways that once symbolized freedom became pathways of fear. William Bonin, the Freeway Killer, was on the loose. His name would soon become synonymous with terror. A man who seemed ordinary on the outside, but harbored a monstrous darkness within. This wasn't just some petty thief man. Bonin was a predator, a hunter who stalked his prey with chilling precision. He wasn't looking for money or valuables. He was after something far more sinister. This dude was hunting young men and boys, picking them up like they were going to a freaking Lynyrd Skynyrd concert, but ending up somewhere way darker. He used the guise of a friendly ride to lure them in, only to reveal his true intentions when it was too late. Bonin's killing spree left California on edge, man. The carefree days of hitchhiking were over. Parents warned their kids, friends looked out for each other, and the once vibrant highways became places of dread. The news was filled with stories of bodies dumped along the freeways. Each new report added to the growing sense of fear. The media dubbed him the Freeway Killer, and his name became a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows. Fear? You could taste it in the air, thicker than a bong hit in a closed room. It was a palpable presence, a constant reminder that safety was an illusion. People started to question their own instincts, wondering if the next ride they took would be their last. Bonin became the bogeyman of the open road, a terrifying reminder that not every ride leads to a good time. His presence cast a long shadow over the highways, turning them into hunting grounds where innocence was lost. Some rides? They lead straight to hell. The open road, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, had become a place of nightmares. Bonin's reign of terror left a scar on the collective psyche, a dark chapter in the history of California's highways. So, what turns a guy into a monster like Bonin? It's complicated, man. His childhood? Let's just say it wasn't exactly Leave It to Beaver. We're talking abuse, neglect, the whole 9 yards. His dad was a drunk, his mom was checked out, and Bonin ended up bouncing around foster homes like a pinball. Some folks say that kind of early trauma can mess you up, man, plant the seeds for some seriously dark shit to grow. It's like your brain gets wired wrong, you know? Now, I'm not saying a rough childhood excuses what Bonin did, not even close. But to understand the darkness, you gotta see where the shadows fell. Bonin's MO was chilling, man. He'd cruise the California highways in his van, looking for young, vulnerable guys. Hitchhikers mostly. Easy targets. He'd lure them in with the promise of a ride, maybe some weed, who knows. But once those doors slammed shut, it was game over. Bonin would torture and kill these guys, man. It was brutal. He didn't just end their lives, he wanted to make them suffer. And the worst part? He seemed to get off on it. The dude was a sadist, plain and simple, a predator who turned the open road into his own twisted hunting ground. Every killer gets sloppy, man. It's like they think they're invincible, untouchable. And for a while, Bonin probably felt that way. He was getting away with murder, literally. But karma, man, it's a real bitch. See, Bonin picked up this one kid and he managed to escape. This kid, he was smart though. He memorized Bonin's license plate, the details of the van, everything. He went straight to the cops, and that, my friends, was the beginning of the end for William Bonin. The walls were closing in, and the Freeway Killer was about to run out of road. Section 5. Justice served, death row, and a grim farewell. They caught Bonin, threw the book at him, and guess what? The trial was intense, with every detail of his heinous crimes laid bare for the world to see. The jury didn't take long to deliberate. He got the death penalty. No surprise there. The judge's gavel came down hard, sealing his fate. The courtroom was filled with a mix of relief and sorrow. The dude was a monster, and even in prison, he couldn't keep his nose clean. He was involved in numerous altercations, always finding a way to stir up trouble. He got caught with plans to escape. More violence, you name it. His cell was frequently searched, and contraband was often found. It was like he thrived on chaos. The guy was hardwired for chaos. He seemed to relish the turmoil, almost as if it was his natural state of being. Guards and inmates alike were always on edge around him. But death row, man, that's a special kind of hell. Isolated from the general population, Bonin spent his days in a small, confined space with nothing but his thoughts and the ticking clock. Years of waiting for the inevitable, each day blending into the next, a monotonous march towards his final moment. The weight of his crimes and the certainty of his fate must have been a heavy burden. In 1996, Bonin's number was up. The date was set, and the preparations began. The execution chamber at San Quentin was ready to claim another life. He died of cancer in San Quentin. Ironically, it wasn't the state that ended his life, but a disease. His final days were spent in a prison hospital, a grim end to a grim life. Some folks say justice was served. They believe that his death, whether by execution or illness, was a fitting end for someone who caused so much pain and suffering. Others say it was too good for him. They argue that he deserved to face the full extent of the law, to be executed for his crimes, rather than succumbing to a natural cause. Me? I say the world's a little less scary without William Bonin in it. His death, however it came about, means one less predator on the streets. And for that, we can all breathe a little easier. Section 6. The Open Road's Dark Side, Bonin's Legacy. Bonin's case, man, it sent shockwaves through America. This wasn't just about one sick puppy. It was about the dark underbelly of the open road. Hitchhiking, which used to be a rite of passage, became a gamble with death. Bonin showed the world that not every smiling face hides good intentions. His crimes left a stain on the California dream, a reminder that even in the land of sunshine and good vibes, darkness can lurk in the shadows. And sometimes, that darkness drives a van. You gotta understand, back in the 70s, hitchhiking wasn't that weird, man. It was almost normal. Gas was expensive, people were more trusting, and thumbing a ride was just a way of life. It was like the Wild West of transportation. You never knew who you might meet on the road. Could be a friendly farmer, a runaway bride, or, yeah, a serial killer. Bonin's reign of terror changed all that. He made people think twice about picking up strangers, and he damn sure made hitchhikers think twice about getting in a stranger's car. What makes a guy like Bonin tick? It's a question that keeps criminologists up at night. Was it the abuse? The neglect? Some twisted wiring in his brain? Maybe it was a bit of everything, man. A perfect storm of nature and nurture that created a monster. But here's the thing. Trying to understand a mind like Bonin's is like staring into the abyss. You can try to make sense of the darkness, but sometimes the darkness just stares back. And in Bonin's case, that darkness was vast and terrifying. Imagine living in California back then. The sun's shining, the waves are crashing, but there's this undercurrent of fear everywhere. Every van that drove by, you'd wonder, is that him? Bonin's crimes didn't just take the lives of his victims. They stole a sense of security from an entire state. Parents wouldn't let their kids hitchhike. People were afraid to stop for anyone on the side of the road. The fear was palpable, man. It hung in the air like smog, a constant reminder that the open road, once a symbol of freedom, could also be a highway to hell. It's easy to get caught up in the gruesome details of a case like Bonin's. The media often sensationalizes the horror, focusing on the perpetrator and the shocking nature of the crimes. But in doing so, we risk losing sight of what truly matters. But we can't forget the victims, man. Each one of them had a story, a life that was abruptly and violently ended. They were more than just names on a list or faces in a news report. Those young lives cut short, full of potential, snuffed out by a monster. They had dreams of their own, aspirations that would never be realized. They were students, athletes, artists, and dreamers. Their futures were stolen from them in the most brutal way imaginable. They were sons, brothers, friends. They were part of families who loved them dearly, who now have to live with an unfillable void. Their absence is felt every single day, in every family gathering, in every moment of joy that is now tinged with sorrow. They had hopes, dreams, fears, just like the rest of us. They wanted to make a difference in the world, to leave their mark. They had plans for the future, plans that were cruelly interrupted. They were human beings with emotions, with lives that mattered. Their stories deserve to be remembered, not just as statistics or headlines, but as human beings who were robbed of their futures. We owe it to them to keep their memories alive, to ensure that they are not forgotten in the shadow of their killer's infamy. So yeah, Bonin might be gone, but the pain he inflicted lives on. The scars he left are deep and enduring, affecting not just the families of the victims, but entire communities. The trauma ripples outwards, touching the lives of many who never even knew the victims personally. Let's honor the memory of those he took by fighting for justice, by ensuring that their deaths were not in vain. We must work tirelessly to create a world where such atrocities are not repeated, where the vulnerable are protected, and where justice prevails. By speaking out against violence, by raising our voices to demand change. We must come together as a community to support one another, to heal, and to prevent future tragedies. It's our collective responsibility to make sure that the lessons learned from these horrific events lead to meaningful action, and by never forgetting the human cost of such horrific crimes. Each life lost is a reminder of the fragility of our existence and the importance of compassion and justice. We must remember, we must act, and we must honor their memories by making the world a safer place for